the ones that stood their ground. Tommy and Gina never back down. Tomorrow's getting harder, make no mistake. Love ain't even luck, you gotta make your own break. It's my life, well it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just wanna live while I'm alive. It's my life like an open highway. Like Frankie said, I did it my way. I just wanna live while I'm alive. It's my life. Better stand tall when they're calling you out. Don't bend, don't break, baby, don't back down. It's my life, well it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just wanna live while I'm alive. It's my life is like an open highway. Like Mickey said, I did it my way. I just wanna live while I'm alive. It's my life, well it's now or never. I wanna live forever. I just wanna live while I'm alive. It's my life. It's my life.
I am David, musician, poet, king. In my youth, I killed Goliath. As a young man, I was a fugitive, pursued by the crazed ruler Saul. My people battled to unite our homeland, and when the house of Saul collapsed, I began a 40-year reign. As king, I fought many wars. Some were for the glory of God, others were regrettably personal. Despite my mistakes, the Lord protected my subjects and me in every challenge. As I reflect on my career, it's clear that God's most providential gift was in the people He sent to serve me, particularly my 37 mighty men. These great warriors defied the odds to repeatedly snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Their achievements are now the stuff of legend. On one occasion, the evil Philistines attacked us in a tribal territory called Ephes Demim, known to the locals as the Border of Blood. The savages were armed to the teeth and mocked us with such confidence that scores of my soldiers fled to the hills, leaving us grossly outnumbered. Thinking we would surely lose, I prayed for a miracle. The miracle appeared in the form of a man named Eleazar. He was the son of Daughtry, a great and devoted judge, and Eleazar certainly made his father proud that day. You see, Eleazar had something that many soldiers lack. He had vision, an unwavering image of a world free of Philistine rule, unburdened by the abuse and tyranny of warmongers. Armed with this vision and a single sword, My remarkable officer threw aside his safety and sprinted to the front lines, directly into the teeth of the assault. The enemy unleashed soldier after soldier after soldier. After each warrior struck at him with blade, spear, and shield, Eleazar dispatched him. Hour after grueling hour, he waged a personal war on this onslaught of the Philistines' best fighters. When the final Philistine was slain, Eleazar collapsed in exhaustion and moved to stow his blood-stained sword in its sheath. But the weapon wouldn't release. His cramped hand muscles were frozen to the hilt even after the battle was over. As helpers arrived to clean away the bodies, I watched my loyal servant hike wearily to his tent, still clutching the sword of victory. Eleazar was a mighty man, a man of vision.
Well, welcome back to week 2 of Lionhearted, where we're looking at how to become the best version of ourselves. And today we're going to look at this idea that there were these incredible mighty men that were drawn to King David, not because King David had it all put together. Quite the opposite. King David was a scoundrel. He made all kinds of mistakes. He struggled with anger. He struggled with lust. He struggled with being narrow-minded. Yet every time he found himself stuck with one of his weaknesses, he asked his God for forgiveness, he found courage from his God, and he got up and he made changes in his life. And men were so drawn to him as a warrior, as a man of courage, but also a man of vulnerability, who was honest about his weaknesses. And they were so drawn to who he was that they just kept coming and training with him and saying, I want to be like somebody like that. You ever met somebody like that? They didn't just have a nice vision statement for the company. They didn't just have a nice vision statement for their life. You got around them and said, I want to become who they are. If I could grow up and be like them, I think I'd want a marriage like that. I think I'd want a dad like that. And it was maybe a coach or a grandfather, a friend, a boss, a colleague. But we're drawn to people who have a vision of who they've become that we'd like to become. I was reading the story of Mike Zell. Mike's a Green Beret and a chaplain. They were running training missions one night, like, get his body in the Humvee. They're pulling the body up, yanking it up, putting the Humvee, see how quick they could get it in. They're pretending there was a chest wound, seeing how quickly they could get him back to the paramedics. Just action, 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 prepare, prepare, prepare. But everyone in his unit knew that he was a Christian. He spoke pretty openly about his faith and his courage and how it was the God he served that had made him and shaped him to become the man he was today. In fact, though he has plenty going on and was very, very busy as a captain, he left the door open to his office all the time so that everyone knew that they were welcome to come in. Well, sure enough, he had one of the guys that reported to him came in with his wife and said, hey, we know you're a chaplain. Is any chance we could do some marriage counseling? We're struggling with a lot of tough stuff. He said, sure, come on in. So as they closed the door and they began to talk a little bit, he could tell that they were intimidated by his rank. So he took his rank off his shirt and he said, guys, just so you know, for the next hour and a half, I work for you. Let's not get ranks get in the way. I'm here to serve you. And they were struck by that. Here's somebody who had rank, had position, but used that rank and position to serve others, not to be served by others. That's actually a vision statement from the life of Jesus. I came to serve, not to be served. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone you feel like if I got around that person, I could become the best version of myself? See, I think as we look at Eleazar's life, we're going to see that all of us long for a vision of who we can be. Oops, I just fit there, sorry. Who we can be, not just what we can do, right? We all do lots of stuff, but we want to become the best version of ourselves. I want a vision of who I can become. So I'll look at three ways that we can add a grander vision to your life. 3 aspects to that to become the best version of yourself. And the first one is this. We need to attach ourselves to a vision that's bigger than us. We need a vision that's bigger than us. to attach our story to a larger story, to not just work harder on our own compassion, work harder on being less angry, work harder at being more selfless. No. We need access to a reservoir, something out there that's got a lot more resources we can put in here. And we certainly see that with David and his men. In fact, we're introduced to two of his mighty men here, but we're going to focus on Eleazar. But the passage mentions two. One guy named Joseph Barishbeth, the chief of captains, he once took on 800 men at once. And he becomes elevated from the 37 to one of David's top 3. Then we're also introduced here to Eleazar, who fights and battles when everyone else had given up, and he's fought for so long, he's been swinging that sword for so long, he can't let go. His hand is literally cramped around the sword. Here's what the Bible passage says about these two mighty men. These are the names of the mighty men whom David had. Joseph Barishbeth, chief among the captains. He was called Adino the Eznite because he killed 800 men at one time. After him was Eleazar, one of the 3 mighty men with David when they defied the Philistines who were gathered there for battle. He arose and attacked the Philistines until his hand was so weary that his hand stuck to the sword. Now it might look like, well, Chad, this isn't a grander vision for his life. This guy is a hardworking, real strong, battle-ready guy who won victories. That's awesome, but what do you mean a grander vision? Well, the Bible goes on right after this to say, yes, he was the one swinging the sword, but the Lord brought about the victory that day. It says it twice. In the middle of this whole story, the Lord brought about the victory. Even in the middle of his opportunities, even in the middle of his using the skills he'd been given, he had a sense, and the Bible has a sense, that he was attached, what he was doing, to a grander vision, a grander story of what God was doing in his life. So when I say a vision, I'm not just saying, hey, I need to make more money, I need to have more status, have more appearance, get some more approval from other people. Those are all fine things. But what you're going to find is your soul is so deep. It was designed for something eternal, not temporal. And so when I say you want a vision bigger than yourself, you need something eternal that can fuel you and help you become who you're meant to be. There was an article in 1990, an article in New York, and it talked about how this particular writer, she's kind of sarcastic. Her name's Cynthia Hemmel. And as she's writing, she talked about these celebrities she knew who dedicated themselves to the grander vision of being more famous and having more things. And all these things weren't eternal. They were just kind of bigger territories and bigger titles. And they did not help her friends become the best version of themselves. In fact, look how she says it. I pity celebrities. Sylvester, Bruce, and Barbara were once perfectly pleasant human beings. But now their wrath is awful. I think when God wants to play a really rotten practical joke on you, he grants you your deepest wish and giggles merrily when you realize you want to kill yourself. See what she's saying? You thought if I just had this title, I'd be happy. And you're like, oh, that didn't satisfy. If I just had this much approval, I'd be happy. It doesn't satisfy. She goes on. You see, Sly and Bruce and Barbara wanted fame. They worked and they pushed, and the morning after each one of them became famous, they wanted to take an overdose. Why? Because that giant thing that they were striving for, that something that was going to make everything okay, was going to make their lives bearable, that was going to provide them with personal fulfillment and happiness, it happened. And they were still them. And the disillusionment turned them into howling and insufferable people. There's nothing wrong with fame, nothing wrong with status, nothing wrong with a good appearance, nothing wrong with money. But they are not eternal things that are going to make you into the best version of yourself. The best version of yourself can enjoy fame without being controlled by it. You can enjoy beauty without having it define you. I was talking to a friend, a very influential CEO recently, and he said, most of my life I've been able to manage a lot of things with my resources, whether it's money or whether it's management or whether it's just innovative thinking. But the last couple of years I've really been changing and becoming the best version of me. I said, I've noticed. Can you tell me kind of what's your secret? He said, yeah, God has put me in circumstances where I can't be self-reliant. As many resources as I've had, it wasn't until I came to the end of myself and I began to really depend on something bigger than me, that I have begun to see God make changes to be the version of me I've been working on for a couple decades. When he's at the end of himself, he needed resources, wisdom, access to strength, and character that came from outside of him. I read the story of Jason Weave. He is the guy who played the voice of Simba in the original Lion King. And so as he was negotiating deals, this was a big break for him. As he came to this big break, they offered him a check in the contract for $2 million, more money than he'd ever seen. He's like, oh my goodness, thank you, agent, thank you. Came home, talked to his mom. His mom's like, I don't know. Mom, what are you talking about? $2 million. Says it doesn't come with any royalties. Aladdin just went big. I think there's a good chance this movie's going to do well, and you should negotiate royalties. Mom! But he trusted his mom. He trusted resources outside of himself, somebody who had more experience, maybe some more wisdom. They asked the agent to go back and negotiate, and they came back, and Disney offers him $100,000. $100,000 instead of $2 million. With royalties. And he trusted the resources outside of himself. And that first check came, and it felt painful. But a few weeks went by, a few months went by, and then a few years went by. And those royalty checks started coming in. And you think about all the ways Lion King has been reinvented since it first came out, and he has made well over $2 million. Not because he was super smart, but because he had access to wisdom outside of himself. And God wants to be that source of wisdom for you, that source of courage for you, that sense of perspective for you. You and I need a vision of something bigger than ourselves to become who we're meant to be. And part of that vision also needs to be, do you have a vision worth suffering for? A lot of us, our vision for our life really is to be comfortable and convenient and may retire early. That's our vision, if you really kind of weed through it all. But do you have anything in your life that is worth suffering for? That if you didn't get any credit for it, you would want to have your hand frozen on that sword doing this, even if no one knew about it. You have such a compelling vision for your life that's worth suffering for. It's worth losing some social capital for, because you know you're making a difference. Do you have anything like that? Eleazar did. See, he dreamed of a world with no Philistines. The Philistines were ancient terrorists, and they were just ruthless what they did and how they did it. And the Philistines are coming to battle one day, and the Israelites come out to finally get rid of these people who've stolen their wives, stolen their daughters, stolen their property, starved many of their people. And as they come out to battle, after him Eleazar, the son of Dodo, of the three mighty men with David, when they defied the Philistines come out, we're going to kill you, and his army comes out, they're gathered there for battle, and all the men of Israel, let's go! Run away, run away, run away. And Eleazar is there with his sword against an entire army when everyone else retreated. I mean, at that point, you do the math, and you're like, I'm out of here. But Eleazar had a vision worth suffering for, that he said, no, I'm going to run toward the battle when everyone else is running away from the battle. I'm going to run toward the fire when everyone else is running away from the fire. We have a culture that does not train us to suffer well. We just don't suffer well. We don't know how to suffer well because our vision is for convenience and comfort. And so part of what God's going to do to make you the best version of yourself is to train you to run toward challenges rather than away from them. In fact, there's a few places still in our culture today that you can actually learn how to do that. So I thought we might hear from somebody who lives here in our community who's been trained to run toward battle lines and toward the fire. And so my friend Mike is here from the Anderson Fire Department. Can we invite Mike to come on up? Mike, come on down. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So again, when most of us see a fire, we run away and we call you. What is it that makes you go, no, there's a fire, I'm going to run toward danger? What makes you want to do that?
Like you said earlier with the vision that we have, I think we a lot of firefighters, we develop this vision that comes from inside that says that we know that there is a need. There's somebody in there who has a need, who's in danger, and on the other side of that is you have people that they're trained, they know how to see that danger, they know what to do with it or how to get around it. So we don't just get a tunnel vision on one simple thing or one, inherently dangerous thing of a part of this big problem that you have here. You're able to look at all these different things and put them together and then act on them pretty aggressively and immediately to kind of keep everything under control.
And you said it's kind of in you, but as we look backwards at your life, there's kind of some people who put some of those things in you. Tell me a little about who influenced you to shape your life in serving other people and sacrificing for other people.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, and even now to this day, my grandfather, he was a big mentor to me. I remember spending lots of time with him when I was younger. He would get up early in the morning, and he was always going to work. Every day I would get up in the morning, and he'd be eating his cereal, and he'd have his Bible there, and he'd read his Bible verses, and we would talk, and he would teach me. And it wasn't like a school, but it was more like you got to take care of people. You got to, and I was seeing it. It wasn't that he was just telling me; it was that I saw him every day. He got up, put his work boots on. He was working hard, and he was taking care of our family. He was taking care of my mom and her sisters and my grandmother. And I just kind of got this sense of that. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take care of each other. And then, as I got older, he kind of told me, find a career that you love doing, and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's true. I love my job. I actually got my grandfather's initials here on my radio strap, so I keep that with me. I wear this every day at work, so it's kind of nice to have him right here with me.
Oh, that's awesome. So what are some of the tools, like when you're heading into danger? Eliezer had his sword. What are kind of the tools you have when you're heading into danger that keep you safe and give you the best chance of rescuing people?
So we have our turnout gear, which is obviously our pants, boots, helmet, everything like that. We'll wear this anytime we're going to anything with a fire, whether it's a car fire or a house fire. We'll have all this stuff on. It's not 100% fireproof. It is fire resistant up to a point.
So if you move quickly through the fire, you're fine?
Yeah.
Just don't stop?
You got to move quick. You got to move quick and put some water on there. So what else we have up here is, because of the smoke that you're going to experience in the fire and heated gas, we'll have an air pack. This is called our SCBA. We'll put this on, and you got about 2 minutes to put all this gear on. So when that call comes in, you have 2 minutes, put it all on, you get in your truck, and you speed on down the road. You're going to be wearing one of these, and you might have some of these in your hand as well. So this is a mask. That's actually going to clip on here. I would have the mask on. I just don't have it on now, but so it would be here. And our air pack.
And you said it's like 60 or 70 pounds you're wearing?
Yeah, this all together is about 60 to 70 pounds. You throw in a hand line coming off of your truck that you're dragging, and your partner or yourself, depending on who's got the hose line, is going to be carrying a set of irons. This is what we would...
Holy cow. That's how much does that weigh?
Maybe 30, 40 pounds together.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's how we get in. That's what we used to get in a house if it was secured. If we were to show up and the doors were locked, or it was nighttime and we weren't sure if people were in there, and we had to rule that out.
Yeah, can you imagine wielding this thing? If you had to swing that axe for 8 hours at a time like they did. I mean, you can imagine just the wear and tear on your muscles.
Yep.
That's incredible.
That's the tool that starts every time, but it runs out of gas the quickest.
I bet it does. Well, tell me, what you said that besides fire, your role as a paramedic is actually one of the ways you get to help people an awful lot too. So.
Yeah. So as firefighter paramedics, especially in Anderson Township, all of our firefighters are firefighter paramedics. You have people with just medical illnesses and strokes, heart attacks, overdoses, all kinds of different things. But those people, just like if you were in a fire, you don't have to have all this gear on to be there for somebody that needs you. Yeah. And on the other side of that, to be able to have the privilege to be that person that you call when you're in need is also is part of our vision.
Sure.
Firefighters have that innate desire to help.
And what's your favorite part of your job? Like, what do you feel like is like, how do you get to help people with, when you tell people, hey, you ought to be a firefighter because we get to what? What's kind of how your summary of what you love about your job?
I know it sounds cheesy, but honestly, to love helping people. If you call me and you're sick, even if you're minorly sick, I'm still going to comfort you. I'm going to tell you we're going to take you to the hospital. We're going to take care of you. And you see people in bad situations, you might just have to talk to them. They just might need someone to talk to. And even that, that's a big responsibility.
Sure.
And I really embrace that, and I take it pretty seriously.
Awesome. Can we thank Mike for serving us in our community? Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here with us today. Yeah. So whether you're wielding a sword or a pen or an axe, what if you looked at your skills, your experience as an opportunity to serve a grander vision of serving other people? What would your current life look like if that was your grander vision? And are you challenging yourself to do something that's uncomfortable or difficult? I don't know if you've ever come across the idea of the flow channel. I came across it about 15 years ago, and I think about it a lot. The flow channel is the idea that you and I do our best work and become the best version of ourselves when we're in the flow. When the challenge level in our life and the skill level we've developed perfectly put us in a place that you're swinging the axe, you're working the numbers for somebody, you're serving with an area, you're giving of yourself, and you feel like, wow, it's just tiring, but I'm doing my best work. I'm in the flow. Now, there's sometimes the challenge level in your life is so high, you are so anxious. And understandably so, because you don't have the skills yet for this job, the skills yet for this life experience, the skills yet for these challenges. And so to move from the anxious back to the flow, you're going to have to develop some skills. And I want to propose to you that there are sometimes we've gotten a lot of business skills, but not a lot of spiritual skills. We haven't learned how to pray, how to depend on God, how to incorporate His life and His characteristics into our life. And the challenge level is not going down. It's going up. Because God wants you to learn how to depend on Him to get you out of anxious mode into the flow. We feel like, wow, there's something I have access to. It's not just creativity. It's not just I'm in the zone. I have access to some kind of otherworldly resources that are allowing me to suffer well, to challenge well in the midst of this. Others of us, our problem isn't skills. Our skills are high. And we're kind of bored. Our vision for our life was to be comfortable and retire early. And the most exciting thing we have going on at lunch is talking about what we're going to do for dinner. And you are high performance, high skilled, but you do not have enough challenge. And maybe God would challenge you to up your challenge level to get back in the flow. I talked to a friend of mine a few months ago, and I said, well, tell me what's going on in your life. He goes, well, people ask me all the time, how did you do it? I said, how'd you do what? How did I retire at 50? That was everybody's goal, retire at 50. So people say, what can I do? How can I learn? He goes, and I always tell him the same thing. Pulling out the notes. He goes, I tell him 2 things they need to know. 2 things you need to know to retire at 50. Here it comes. He said, number 1, the days are long. Number 2, my pool is clean. He said, be careful what you wish for. I got high skills, high resources, but not enough challenge to make my life really make a difference. Are you in the flow? That's interesting what happens here. As everyone else has retreated, look what happens here with Eleazar. When everyone else retreats, it says, he arose and attacked the Philistines. He is at it. He is worn out. He is suffering, doing something in the flow. In fact, it says here that his hand was weary, so much so that he's worked so hard, his hand is stuck to the sword because of all that. But again, it reiterates, but the Lord brought victory that day. The Lord brought a great victory that day because he had access to resources beyond himself. And here's a little bit about the Philistines. The Philistines are not like, dwarves or giants from the Lord of the Rings. These are real people in history that were ancient terrorists. That they are recorded all through the Bible as people who just steal and rape and kill and destroy the people of God. But there's actually been lots of archaeological research to support that they're often called the Philistines or the Sea People had this as a common practice. This is the Ekron royal dedication inscription that talks about the Philistines and some of the things they did during that time. They didn't just take on the Israelites, though. The Egyptians fought them quite a bit. There's several gigantic walls recording the battle lines between the Egyptians and the Sea People or the Philistines. In fact, this particular picture has pictures of the Philistines. They've been beaten and they're seated as servants now before the Egyptians after a mighty battle. This is actually a picture showing what the Philistines looked like. They were a high cultured people, very influential people, very rich people, but they used their resources not to serve others, but to devastate others. In fact, if you've never studied through the Bible, and maybe this is a year you want to maybe up your skill level of knowing the Bible more, knowing God more, we have 2 different services. We have 4 services at our church, but 2 of them are 100% different from the other 2. So right now in our equipping service, which is 4:30 on Saturday and 8:50 on Sunday, we're going verse by verse through the book of 1 Samuel. And we are studying the Philistines and the rise of King Saul and the rise of King David and the battle with Goliath. And we're going to spend the next 8 months going verse by verse by verse through 1 Samuel. 2 weeks ago, we learned how to grieve with God when you're struggling with infertility or whatever you're struggling with. How do you grieve with God? This morning at 8:50 and last night, I spoke about how to develop a thankful heart. Like Hannah had a thankful heart that God was with her in her challenges. And now that we have our services available online and on our app, we did fix the glitch I mentioned from last week, so you can download our app at Horizon Space CC. And if you're just during the week, hey, I want another kind of spiritual shot in the arm, go ahead and watch one of our services online. Throw it up on your TV. You can watch our first service, even though you're attending our second service. Or maybe you want to start attending the Saturday service and going out to dinner with some friends afterwards. Make this the year that you up your spiritual skill level, learning how to pray, maybe getting into a Bible study. Actually, on our new app, there's Bible study tools there for a through-the-year reading plan. There's different commentaries when you read a Bible passage on how to look it up and understand what it means. But increase your vision for who you can become as you get access to those resources. Because our vision as a church is to comfortably connect people to God through the Bible and a community of growing Christ followers. We want to help you connect with God. I said there's 3 aspects to this, right? Part of why we do what we do as a church is because we believe that the God David knew wasn't a God who watches from a distance and says, get your act together. It's a God who came in and battled for us. We battle to serve others because our God battled for us. Now, how many of you know who Jimmy Stewart is, right? Jimmy Stewart? Yeah. You want the moon, Mary? You want the moon? I'll throw a lasso around it. We'll pull it down here. Put it in your mouth. Little moonbeams coming out of your eyeballs. I like that. My brother Harry went to war. Jimmy Stewart. We know him from It's a Wonderful Life. Happy New Year, yo. Bailey building alone. But what you may not know is that prior to that movie, he actually got famous for Philadelphia Story. Won a lot of awards, a lot of fame, a lot of influence, a lot of money. And then World War II happened. And he said, despite my comfort level, despite the ease of my life, despite my awards, I want to go and serve others on the battle lines. So he enlisted in the army, and they didn't take him because he didn't weigh enough for his height. So he went and bulked up, and he got enlisted by the Air Force. But because he was famous Jimmy Stewart, they kept him stateside to train people. He was a private pilot with 400 hours of experience. So they had him train other pilots. But he's like, I want to be on the battle lines serving my country. So he fought and pushed until they eventually moved him to London, where he was, after winning award after award, medal after medal, they put him in charge of the bombing raids. And even then, he didn't send other people on the bombing raids. He assigned himself to almost every bombing raid to be an example to his men. And he ran bombing raids after bombing raids after bombing raids for years. He would return to the States suffering horrific PTSD from all of the explosions, all of the bombing raids, seeing friends fall out of airplanes, hearing them scream. Thought his career was over, thought his life was over. And this movie that did not do very well at all, It's a Wonderful Life, was willing to take a risk on him, even in his current condition. So he played a suicidal father named George Bailey. And several accounts say that some of the most emotional moments in the movie are moments when he's actually experiencing PTSD, and he found that movie to be very therapeutic for him. And suddenly now you're watching It's a Wonderful Life about a God who says your life matters, and when you feel hopeless, realize I'm using you to influence other people and make a bigger difference. And suddenly that movie takes on a lot more meaning, doesn't it? See, the God of the Bible is just like that story. God had comfort and convenience and fame in heaven. And he didn't just come to earth and say, here's 10 commandments, good luck. He came, was born into history. He faced betrayal. He came to the front lines, had his cousin beheaded, got to feel what it's like to have injustice, to be betrayed by his best friends, to be shunned, to be mocked, and to ultimately come to a time in history when he was crucified, not lethal injection, but crucified with railroad spikes pounded into his hands and feet. Because this was the type of God who came to serve you and I, to bring us forgiveness, to bring us mercy and grace, because he wanted to show you he doesn't just sit up in the heavens, he comes and battles for you so that you know you matter. You are God's vision. He so cared about you, he so wanted to have a friendship with you, he so wanted to have an eternal relationship with you, he was willing to come and battle for you. He had a vision worth suffering for, and the vision was you. And the reason we serve others and suffer for others is because our God served and suffered for us. So that third aspect of a grander vision, we could become not a what, but a who. That we would have a vision of who we could become. There's a prophet later in David's life that comes along and says, it's not by might and it's not by power, but it's by my spirit, says the Lord. That what you need to become the best version of yourself is not a lot more power and not a lot more might. You're going to be limited by your own power and your own might, no matter how high you get. What you need is access to God's Spirit, that his Spirit can put into your spirit the resources you need. I need self-control in my spirit that can only come from the Spirit. And that's why the message of the Bible is not work hard and God accepts you. It's you can't make it, so invite God to come into you so you have the engine of his Spirit in you to become who you're meant to be. You start saying, I'm so much more selfless in my marriage than I used to be. Why? It's like there's someone else here helping steer my words and steer my anger. I'm feeling access to the Spirit of God in me. And that's not just when circumstances are good. Do you have access to the Spirit of God when you face horrific circumstances? Travis did. Travis, at age 20, had no idea that a vision for a life of service would take him face to face to his greatest fear. But it's in the middle of moments of despair that he found a way to become the best version of himself, even in the face of adversity. I want you to hear his story and see if, as you face circumstances, do you have access to a reservoir that would give you joy as you faced challenges like this? Do you have access to something that if you faced adversity like that could help you become the best version of yourself, a thankful version of yourself, a hopeful version of yourself, or a bitter version of yourself? Here's my takeaway for you. What attracted the people to David was his God. Make the ultimate son of David your king. When you look at those 400 men that turned into the 37 men that turned into the 3 men, let me show you, he was not dealing with the cream of the crop. Look what it says. When his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And here's everyone who came to David. And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. This is quite a group. They're all distressed, all discontent, and all in debt. But they came to him. And David became their captain over them, and there were about 400 men with him. But these 400 people who didn't have their act together got around David and saw him get around his God. And David would eventually have a son of David, which is what Jesus is known by when he's born, the son of David, who would be the ultimate king, who didn't struggle with anger and didn't struggle with lust. He had all the grace, all the forgiveness, all the compassion, but he had the best version of himself. And he says, I want to be your king because I will give you the access to the hope that you need. You ever seen the inscription on the Statue of Liberty? It says something similar, actually, to this passage. It doesn't say, give me your best. It says, give me whoever. Give me the leftovers to your country. And in a spirit of freedom, watch what we do with it. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest toast to me, and I lift my lamp beside the golden door. It's a vision of freedom. God has a vision for freedom. Whatever you've done, whatever you struggle with, come and experience the freedom of doing it with God. I got a chance to see an interview with Randall Wallace, the guy who wrote the movie Braveheart. He was talking about how he discovered that story. He was over in Scotland, and while he was there, he learned about William Wallace. He's like, why have I never heard the story of this man? And he said, as a screenwriter, good stories aren't things you make up. They're often stories that are given to you, and this was a story given to me. He said, and William Wallace was an incredible follower of Jesus, and his life is an incredible life of courage. And as he was writing that speech, because they didn't know exactly what he said that day as he rode his horse back and forth that inspired everyone to fight for freedom. So he said, I wanted to write a speech that was consistent with the history I knew, but if I was sitting there on the horse that day, I'd want to follow that guy into battle. So I wrote the speech that we all know. They can take away our rights, but they can't take away our freedom! He said, the speech I wrote was the speech that would have gotten me off the horse to go and serve and love and care for other people. He said, but what struck me most about William Wallace as I wrote that screenplay is he was an incredible, courageous example of a follower of Jesus and a warrior-like life. Do you have some battles you need to fight? Do you have some challenges you need to take on? Do you need access to resources you don't currently have? Let me pray for you that God will give you the resources you need to take on the fights that are just outside that door. Let's pray. Maybe you want to start by saying, God, forgive me. I'm a lot like David, and I got a lot of things that aren't right. But I invite your Spirit in to make me the best version of myself. Father, help me take on the battle. Be my warrior living within my heart. And Father, we ask for each person here, whatever they're facing, whatever is waiting for them outside this door, God, you will be their courage and their shield and their tower of refuge and their strength. Fight for them as they lean on you.
I want to see you run any way you want. Never let the darkness hold you back. No fear of getting lost. I want to see you fly way beyond the sun. Anything you're ever gonna dream, I pray that it will come. But if you ever fall down straight to the bottom and you can't get back where you started, any place, anytime, you gotta know for you I'll fight. Where you wanna go, I'd love to take you there. Wish that I could make the road easy. I wish that life was fair. Don't wanna see you cry, even when it rains. And I hope you don't forget this. You were born for better things. But if you ever fall down straight to the bottom and you can't get back where you started with no strength to stand, I'm gonna reach for your hand when the going gets rough, right where it's hurting. I won't be there to help bear the burden, any place, anytime. You gotta know for you I fight.
We're so glad you joined us this morning. We're going to continue next week in our Lionhearted series. We'd like to let you know before you leave today, we have a special event tonight. If you have a situation going on and you'd like to learn more about kids in our lives and our families that have mental health issues, we're having a family night tonight at 6 o'clock right here at Horizon. Chad will be speaking, and special guests from the Linner Center of Hope will be here to discuss where that intersection between science and faith meet to help our kids. Have a great afternoon.